Apex is extremely unique, not just because of its gameplay aspects like movement and gunplay, its lore, or even for better or worse, the people that play the game, but also for how it's reached the highest of highs after a surprise launch with no marketing, and now 6 years later, seemingly heading towards its lowest point ever and, in quotation marks, dying. So, let's take a deep dive into everything Apex over the past 6 years and see why Apex is dying, and if it's still worth playing, if it can be saved, and get some insane nostalgia while doing it. Quickly, in case you're new here and want to know why you should listen to me ramble about Apex, well, first off, hopefully you love Apex and want the best for it just like I do, but otherwise, I have a crazy amount of hours in the game, I'm a day one player, I consistently play with the best of the best players in the game, and also casual players, aka all my friends, so I can see the game from both angles and all angles. I've reached Pred, the highest rank in Apex, multiple times. I was the #1 kill grinder, the #1 Watson in the world for over 2 years, and I'm still top 50 within the game for kills, wins, damage, I mean, basically everything. And on top of that, as you may know, I spent way too much money on this game. So, is Apex dying, and will it be dead anytime soon? Well, yes, it is dying, but you have to remember, this game is 6 years old and owned by EA. It's not going to be dead anytime soon. Until a real Apex killer comes out, this game won't die. Many of these Apex killers pop up and everyone thinks they're the next big in thing, gonna take over Apex, but after a month or two, they're basically dead, no one's playing them, and Apex is, well, fine. So, before we look at the many, and I mean many issues with Apex causing it to be where it is today, we have to understand why this game was so good to begin with. So, let's have a look at all the positives of Apex Legends that once helped it grow to having 600,000 concurrent players. The core game of Apex is unbeatable. A lot of times we take for granted how good it really is. It's insane. No matter how many issues this game has, most players will tend to come back to this game time and time again. We'll quit, but we'll always find our way back to Apex. At least for me, I find myself playing a different game, and then I'm like, wow, this feature or that feature from Apex, and I come floating back. And that's because, well, the core gameplay and movement is so unique and polished in this game. There's no other game like it. When this game was released on February 4 in 2019, it felt like an interesting continuation of Titanfall, which makes sense as it is built off that universe and built on the same engine, has the same coding, and took features so many people loved from Titanfall and took it into the BR scene. Then, along with this, Apex introduced things like the respawn system, which was a first for Battle Royales and added so much more depth and so many more layers into the game. It's honestly hard to even imagine a Battle Royale without a respawn system now. Like, look at Fortnite, they've introduced it. Something a lot of people overlook is Apex's ping system. This was revolutionary in its design when it came into Apex, and it's influenced almost every other game going forward. It allowed for the fast-paced movement of the game to not be interrupted while being able to communicate with your team flawlessly. There was also amazing progression in the game when it first came out. A little bit slow at times, but it was still awesome. There was always something to do and something to work towards. Whether it was from leveling up and getting rewarded from that with packs or being able to unlock new legends, over to getting badges and grinding for the harder ones. And the badges had their own progression system as well, with, you know, the damage badges going up from 2k all the way to 4k. The badges didn't stop there either. Who can forget some of the best, rarest, and most unique badges ever added to the game in Season 1? There was the Glory Seeker, Variety Show, and Wild Frontier Champion badges. In order to get these, you had to work for them by winning and doing damage on every single legend, winning in certain game modes, and they were animated. They looked so cool. There was something to do each season. I wish we still had those. There was so much to do, so much progression within the game. Then, of course, there was game modes. So many game modes, at least in comparison to now. At times, it was a little slow, but within the first couple of years of Apex, there was so many unique, amazing game modes added. Some which offered a more competitive side, like Apex Elite Queue, or even ranked in Season 2. Then there was Apex Solos or Gold Rush Duos, which allowed you to avoid randoms and let the solo players thrive. Or there was fun, silly event game modes like Armed and Dangerous, Shadowfall, Winter Express, Live Die Live, Third Person Mode, Always Be Closing, Dummies Big Day, Deja Loot, Flashpoint, and so many more. Hell, there was even arenas, and while that didn't work out exactly how Respawn had intended, due to, well, basically them neglecting it, it still had a die-hard community and offered so much potential for the game. Hell, maybe a little bit later on, but there was even clubs. I was so excited for clubs. I thought it offered so much potential. The things that could have been done with clubs was unlimited, but once again, it was, well, neglected. I'm starting to list a couple of negative things. I gotta stop that. I've got a couple more positives before we get to the, well, a lot of negatives. If we want to look at the game from a slightly different perspective as well, even though it wasn't my thing, there was the lore. The devs were so good at creating lore for this game. The development of the characters, connection to the characters, and an immersion in the game that it offered was so good. They did this through each legend being so unique. They have so many different aspects to them. Whether it was from their voice lines, to their gestures, to their finishes, to the emotes, just simply to the way they run. Like, it's genuinely amazing. Their abilities fit so well with their lore and matched who they were. The devs were so good at story building with the lore, and that helped the players build connections to the legends and help, choose your main and want to play the game and enjoy what you were doing. Story left questions of people wanting and needing more. Whereas now in current Apex, a lot of the uniqueness, individuality, the legends that were built on and given is now gone. And now the lore itself is being changed and more of a drip fed to its community. Hell, a large part of the lore these days is just a love triangle between Bang, Loba, and Valk, which is okay, but it's probably been drawn out a little too long. Over time, Apex has had a lot of good updates as well. Things like the armor changes over time, the class system being introduced, the perk system being introduced. They've all improved the game and made it more refreshing. Legends, weapons, and map updates, when they were added to the game, were legitimately game-changing. They caused fun, extreme hype. Like, do you remember when World's Edge or Olympus was added to the game? It was so good. Now compare that to when Broken Moon or E-District were added. Or maybe when Horizon, Rev, and Loba were added to the game, and now compare that to Alter, Ballistic, and Catalyst. While those are extremes, you get my point. While I'm sure I missed a bunch of things that helped Apex grow to the amazing heights it once was at, it was definitely its forward-thinking, uniqueness, willing to take risks, do things that others haven't before. But sadly, these heights were not something Apex could sustain for long, and the fall-off has been, honestly, pretty fast. So let's go have a look at all the reasons and I guess events that have taken place to cause Apex to slowly die and lose their player base. In order to structure all the issues or major points in time that are causing the downfall of Apex, we have a little timeline here of when they first started or were most prevalent. I'm not going to lie, I stole this off Garrett, who stole it off someone on Reddit, but I've added a bunch more to it and adjusted a few things myself. But before we get to each of the individual points on that timeline, there's a few we have to talk about that are overall issues with Apex that have been here since day one. First up, audio. Don't get me wrong, back in season 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, audio was a lot better than it is today, but it was, still not great. It's always been an issue for the devs, always been an issue for Apex. They've said they'll look at fixing it multiple times, and they've done things here or there, but ultimately, it hasn't worked, and the audio is still terrible and getting worse season by season by season. Then, there's server issues. Apex has had an unlimited amount of issues with servers, from servers fully not working for days or weeks at a time, to them being ridiculously laggy. At the moment, there's ridiculous no-reg issues, and on top of that, they have a 20-tick rate servers. To put that in perspective, games like Roblox, Dead by Daylight, or even Golf with Friends have a higher tick rate, and then more comparable games like Valorant have 128, Counter-Strike and Overwatch have 64, or Fortnite have 30 tick rate servers. There are two other major issues that have plagued Apex throughout its entire life cycle, first off being matchmaking and SBMM, we all know how bad that's been, and of course cheaters. Back in day one, we had speed hackers running everywhere. Then we had major hackers taking over the game at different points, but both of these ramp up at later dates. So while they have been there the whole time, we'll talk about them mainly at those times. So now let's jump into this timeline and have a look at all the issues in Apex that have been causing its drop-off and downfall and possible future death. March 2019, season 1 of Apex Legends. Honestly, this point isn't too bad. It was just a lackluster season where there wasn't much going on, the battle pass was kind of lackluster, and Apex saw its real first dip in players. But the devs did come out to say that they weren't experienced with live service games, they were still learning as they're going, and they promised to do better going forward. But that does lead us into July 2019 and season 2, where major controversy happened. Well, the first major controversy for Apex, as there's a lot of them. In an argument on Reddit between players and developers, one of the devs called Apex's players dicks, arse-hats, and freeloaders. This was in relation to Apex's predatory monetization schemes, and in particular the Iron Crown event. In this event, the first ever collection event in Apex, you had to unlock 24 items and then buy the heirloom after. And as is common today, if you wanted a certain skin, you had to gamble for it by buying packs and couldn't buy it outright. Then, once buying all 24 packs, you had to pay an extra 3,500 coins to get the Bloodhound heirloom. As expected, there was extreme backlash from the player base on this, and the devs came forward and put out a statement saying that they had broken a promise to players where they had intended to do monetization in a way that felt fair and provided choice to the players on how they spent their money and time. Not gonna lie, it's kind of funny looking back at this today, knowing how a lot of the future collection events and events in general go. For the next year or so, and about 6 seasons, Apex did absolutely fantastic. Then, mid-season 7, the start of 2021, Apex had its first big scandal or major issue. Cheating, especially Toofy. Toofy the hacker, and the rise of cheating in general. I'm sure everyone watching this video knows of Destroyer 2009 and how he rampantly took over Apex with his cheats, But the newer viewers won't know much about Toothy. All the way back in Season 8, he was basically another Destroyer 2009. If you were a major streamer or a major name in Apex in any way, he would ruin your day the second you went live streaming. Whether it was Imperial Hull, the #1 Pred Rogue, Shiv, it didn't matter. He had every cheat imaginable and wasn't afraid to blatantly use them, always with his own name, never trying to hide it. He would force streamers to have punch-off fights, and if people didn't do as he said, he would just murder them and stream snipe them for the rest of the day. Here's one of the most famous clips of Toothy trying to make Hull and 5 other pros have a punch-off.
I think we should shit on them. That'd be way more funny.
Let me heal up.
I'm down. I'm down.
Ready?
You ready?
Set, go.
3, 2. No! Timmy said no!
No, 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 no!
I was inviting.
No, 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 no! No, 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 no!
As I've said, this lasted for seasons and got no public treatment from Respawn or the devs in any way. This was also the point where I personally felt like cheating took off and became unbearable, impossible to avoid. But I asked Twitter to make sure that people agreed with me, and yeah, well, everyone did, saying that Season 7, or the Toothy season, aka Season 7. And I think Forby here, who by the way is an amazing content creator, check him out, summed it up pretty well. I could sit here and talk about how bad the cheating is in Apex for literally an hour, but to save us some time, just imagine every single high-ranked game is infested with cheaters. As you'll see later in this video, it's 40% plus players in Master and Pred in the later seasons that are literally cheating. And the cheating isn't just limited to ranked either. Pubs are absolutely and utterly infested, especially if you play on Asian servers like I do. It's honestly sometimes hard to go 3 or 4 games without finding a cheater in pubs, let alone ranked, where it's every game. Not long later, and Apex had more hacking and cheater issues, but this one was a little different. All of Apex got hacked. The Save Titanfall hack. Hackers, to an extent, took over Apex, making the game unplayable. The objective and goal of the hack was to raise awareness for all the issues that Titanfall was currently having, from the server issues to the amount of hackers that were on the game making it unplayable. Kind of ironic, hey? During the hack on the home screen of Apex, for all to see, things like Save Titanfall and Titanfall being attacked, so now Apex is as well, was left for all to see. Respawn's response to this was acknowledging that the hack was there, and they worked quickly to restore the normal services to Apex, and they reiterated their commitment to Titanfall, although they wouldn't be fixing that until they'd done getting Apex working properly. But overall, this event highlighted a very important issue with Apex, and one that you will see becomes much more prevalent later on in the timeline. The game's security. While this was largely forgotten about and moved on from, this definitely comes back later in the video. Now we jump forward to Season 10, August 2021, and a point that is big for me, but some of you guys might disagree with. The introduction of Seer and what I call the wall hack takeover. Up to this point, we already had some legends in the game that had wall hacks like Bloodhound. And just before this, there was, Fuse added who has wall hacks in his ult. Valk was added who has wall hacks in her ult. And now we had Seer, the wall hack legend. And from this point, almost every single update that Apex put out had some reference or some level of wall hacks being added to the game. Whether it was people being highlighted when abilities were put on them, or even the newest changes for recon classes, where now if someone's near you and you aim in, they turn red, or there's an outline around players, or when you shoot someone, you get to see their full HP. For me, this just lowers the skill gap in Apex and just gives such valuable and such important information for absolute free that you should have to work for and understand the basics of the game. I personally don't like that, but I do see that it could make the game easier for casuals, but still something that I'm personally not a fan of. Shortly after that, Season 11 was an interesting one, because we got a new legend, Ash, and a new map, Stormpoint, and honestly, these two were really good. Ash was a little underwhelming, but Stormpoint's turned out to be one of the best maps in the entire game, and Ash these days is super, super strong. But there was not a single new limited time mode in the entire season. The only thing we got was a reused Winter Express for Christmas, and in this, they didn't even fix the glitch where you could sit inside the box on the cart and be unkillable and win for free. It was kind of lack of effort and honestly just wasn't great. But don't worry, during this time, we did get 5 store events. Up next, at the start of Season 12, there was a little bit of controversy. A new movement tech that had recently been found called punch boosting was removed from the game by the Apex developers. While it was accessible to everyone, controller, mouse, and keyboard, it didn't matter, and extremely simple to do and a lot of fun, the devs took it out of the game as it wasn't meant to be in the game. Which, at least for me, showed a shift in thinking by the developers. Because in the past, all other movement tech started off the same way, as an exploit or something that wasn't meant to be in the game. Think tap strafing, super gliding, wall bouncing. None of those were intended to be in the games. They were just bugs or exploits that were found and left because they were cool and suited the game well. I mean, so was armor swapping. It was exactly exactly the same. So I felt like a shift in the way the devs were doing things, which absolutely sucked. And now we jump forward to season 13. Well, the end of it, I guess, as this was the end of town takeovers. If you guys are new to Apex and don't know what town takeovers are, basically they're when a POI on the map is taken over by a legend and customized to be more like them. So think Octane's Gauntlet. Basically, that was implemented and put onto the map, and it's based around Octane. Or think of Mirage Voyage. That shit based around Mirage. There was Octane's Gauntlet. We had Labs for Wraith. We had Mirage Voyage. We had Bloodhound's Trials, Crypto's Map Room, Pathfinder's Fight Night, Caustic's Treatment, Rampart's Big Mord, Lifeline's Clinic, which was the last ever one in Season 13. All of these POIs either got added to the map or they took over an existing part on the map and were made to be evolved around a legend, adding certain aspects of them and cool new features to the game. May I say the portal at Labs, the gold weapons at Caustic's place, the little mini game you could do inside Bloodhound's Trials for loot, Crypto's Map Room you could scan to get more information, Pathfinder's Fight Night where you can only punch inside it, Rampart's Big Mord where you could get the leveled up guns. They were so awesome. They added so much more lore and, uniqueness to the legends. But sadly, that was the last ever one we saw, Lifeline's Clinic in Season 13, which for me is a big disappointment as I thought these were a great aspect to the game. They brought a lot of hype. Over the next year or so, Apex just went down basically the same path. Lots and lots and lots of story events, collection events. There was a few new game modes, but largely they were all reused game modes. We had a lot of different rank systems introduced, some good, some bad. Actually, there weren't many good ones. They were all bad, but some were better than others. Some absolutely awful. Season 17, I'm looking at you. It wasn't the worst time for Apex. There was a lot of glitches and bugs as expected, but it was pretty decent. Then February 2023 hit, and 200 quality assurance playtesters at Apex Legends were released. For a game that's making an absurd amount of money that is still riddled with so many glitches, bugs, and issues, especially every single time a new update or a new season, new legend, new map is pushed out, it's crazy that so many quality assurance testers were released. And now it's season 15 time, February 2023 for Apex, and we're going to jump back to an issue we had at the very start of the game and an issue that's going to become extremely prevalent going forward as well. More monetization issues. In the Celestial Sunrise event, a recolored PK was put as the ultimate prize in a collection event. Meaning basically you had to pay $160 to get a recolored PK. It's still to this day one of the most expensive skins ever in the game. Definitely the most expensive recolor. Probably the most expensive recolor ever in any game. As expected, there was extreme backlash for the devs into this, and they responded saying they won't do it again and telling players to quote unquote vote with their wallets. Season 17 hits, and with it comes one of the biggest issues with Apex ever. Something that has persisted from then till today and is slowly, or maybe not so slowly, killing the game and the player base. That being SBMM, aka how sweaty your games are and how matchmaking works. Don't get me wrong, this has been an issue throughout all of Apex's life cycle. At times it's been better than others, and at other points in times it's been worse. And it's obviously a very hard thing to do with, the player base constantly evolving, becoming larger, smaller, skill levels changing, the rank system constantly changing, etc. But in Season 17 and from Season 17 onwards, there has been a crazy, insanely noticeable shift in how it works. The game is now insanely sweaty, like ridiculously sweaty. If you're a good player, your pubs feel like ranked. You're only going up against Pred 3 stacks constantly. Meanwhile, if you're an average player, well, it still feels like ranked and you're still only going up against Pred 3 stacks constantly. Maybe you'll be lucky, log on and have one or two good games absolutely pop off, but then Apex go, oh my god, this guy's really good. We better go throw him into the hardest lobbies there possibly are. Now, don't get me wrong, this largely could be because a lot of the casuals are leaving the game and it's only the sweats of the sweats left. Or it could be engagement-based matchmaking, where basically you're given a couple of free games, good games to get you, happy and loving playing Apex before they put you in harder lobbies to lose a bunch, then back to having another easy game so you're hyped again, and they rotate that over and over to keep your engagement playing Apex. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how it works or be an expert on it because I'm simply not, but all I can tell you is it is ridiculous. Pubs are the sweatiest thing in the entire world, from whether you're a good player down to whether you're a casual player. It's absolutely ridiculous. Although, the one thing they have done right is Smurfs are not really a big issue because, well, Smurfing doesn't matter because no matter what rank you are, you still verse Preds. September 2023. It was the end of another amazing thing in Apex. We had the very last ever legend-specific heirloom. That being Fuses. After Fuses' legend-specific heirloom, the amazing guitar, no more have been released, and the devs have been directed or shifted more towards universal heirlooms. One can only imagine because, in theory, more people will buy them as they can be used on every legend, and they'll make more money. I'm sure there are a lot of people that will argue it's a great thing as they can be used on all legends, etc., But personally for me, individual legend heirlooms added so much to the legend, so much creativity, so much uniqueness to them, and it added so much to their lore. I thought it was absolutely awesome, and it's super, super sad to see it gone. I'm just glad my main Watson got one, even if it was terrible. And it looks like we're staying on the track of monetization things in Apex as well. There's a lot of that stuff coming up, but now it's January 2024, and we get our first ever milestone event. This was in with the collaboration Final Fantasy event, which had so much potential to be awesome and amazing, but also signified what we just spoke about, the shift from legend-specific heirlooms over to universal heirlooms. And let's be real, it sucked. The universal heirloom was awful. It had limited animations, didn't look flashy, took up a lot of your screen, but at the same time, when you were running with it, you still couldn't see much. So how those both work at the same time, I don't know, but congrats on doing that, I guess, Apex. Oh, and of course, you got a death box if you unlocked it all. That's right, a $360 death box. This event had 2 extra special features as well. One, if you wanted to get a certain skin from the event, you had to gamble to get it. You couldn't buy it outright with craft materials or Apex coins. You had to gamble and hope you got it out of the pack that you opened. Although they did add a new rarity of item iconic skins, and those ones you could buy in the event. But they were really, really expensive, much more expensive than legendary skins. And it honestly just felt like they added this iconic name so they could charge more than what a legendary skin normally costs. Our next point on the timeline comes shortly after. It's the end of January 2024, and roller tap strafe has been removed, or I guess you could call it the CFG config crackdown. So there was a big issue in Apex, largely all on PC, or actually all on PC, where you could use configs to do an insane amount of things, from basic movement like tap strafe over to having no recoil, auto armor swaps, auto 360s, and so much more. This was done by exploiting an issue with an accessibility feature in the game. Kind of sad. Here's the video of it that went viral and a couple of examples of what it could do. In my eyes, this was just cheating, and I'm glad that the devs, finally, after a long time, cracked down on it and, reverted the way that CFGs were used in order to do this. In saying that, I think the devs missed an absolutely massive opportunity here. They could have used this as the chance to make tap strafing more accessible, or even just general movement more accessible to controller players. And they could have also used this as a chance to address the issue of cheating on console in relation to Zens and whatnot. And now it's time for one of the biggest issues, probably the biggest issue Apex has ever had to deal with, and something player-wise, player count-wise, that they've never fully recovered from, the ALGS hack. I won't go into insane detail on it, as there's a lot of information out there about it, and most people watching this probably already know about it, as it was absolutely huge. But for those that don't, in short, 2 of the biggest players in the entire game, mid-tournament, had their PCs hacked. Or, I guess, compromised. First off, it was Jen Burton, and then it was his teammate, Imperial Hull. This was, well, an absolutely ridiculous, crazy time for Apex. No one knew what was going on. The Apex devs were not saying anything. They were radio silent about it all for so long. Until finally, what was legitimately weeks later, and Apex put out a statement saying basically that they'd upped their security and deployed a layered series of updates to the game in order to protect it and their players. But sadly, Apex never fully recovered from this. During this time, so many people uninstalled the game, and they simply just never reinstalled it. I, to this day, on my videos and in my stream, get asked, is the game safe to play because of this? And I honestly don't know how to answer that, because as a community, we never really got an answer. We don't know. Did they fully deal with the issue? Is the game fully safe to play? We only just have to hope that it is. Now, let's move away from that, because honestly, that sucked. And let's go back to, let's go back to our monetization in Apex. As March 26, 2014, we got our second ever milestone event, the Shadow Society milestone event. The devs took feedback from the first milestone event we just spoke about, and yeah, they ignored all of it and made it worse. The free packs you got in the original event were removed and you no longer got. There were no skins that you could buy individually like in the last one, and one of the prizes at the end was another death box. Now, looking at a more present time, Season 21, only almost 2 seasons ago. In this season, Duos was removed for the whole season, legitimately 3 months without some people's favorite game mode, mine included. There was also another universal heirloom added, although this one was super customizable. But the only way to customize it was with a new entire currency they added to the game, which didn't really make any sense. The game didn't need any more currencies. It was basically just another money grab. This new currency was exotic shards, and it was only purchasable with real money, and then only usable to get upgrades to your universal heirlooms, or to buy a pay-to-win recolored skin of an old flatline or R99. At least to me, it's just screaming money, 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 we want more money. Like, why couldn't they have used legend tokens? Legend tokens have been in the game since day one, and they're usable for basically nothing. I personally have about 3.5, maybe 4 million of these, a literal crazy amount. They could have made it so customizations to the universal heirloom were done with these. Maybe it was 100,000, 200,000 per customization. You still would have to buy the base heirloom out with real money, but then you could have used these to upgrade it, which would have been super cool and really, really amazing. But yeah, well, they didn't. I guess because they wanted more money. And now it's time for one of the biggest moments on this timeline. One of the biggest turning points for Apex as a whole, the Battle Pass rework. And it follows the idea of what we were just talking about. Money, 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 and more money. Apex has always had this amazing feature with their Battle Passes where if you finish one Battle Pass, you would get a bunch of Apex coins from it, enough to buy the very next Battle Pass. Then you can do the same thing and continuously just get every single Battle Pass by doing that, basically only ever having to buy one Battle Pass. They decided basically this was bad for business as not enough people were buying the Battle Pass because within reason they were getting it for free. So they said, no, we're changing that. And now if you guys want the Battle Pass, the only way to purchase it every season is going to be with real life money. Apex coins can't be used anymore. There were a bunch of other changes as well, like splitting the one Battle Pass into two Battle Passes that would be one for each split, with the reasoning of making it easier for people to finish. But the major issue and one that everyone was upset about was that they had to now buy it with real money and couldn't use the Apex coins that they previously had been. This caused insane backlash, the most backlash Apex has ever got. Legitimately, their game, mid-tournament being hacked, was not as bad as this backlash-wise. On Steam, the game got review bombed beyond belief and went from being extremely highly rated and overly positive down to a negative review. It was ridiculous. It got more than 50,000 negative reviews in a month. That's actually crazy. It's absurd. It was basically the straw that broke the camel's back for the Apex community. All the other issues that they'd been dealing with and putting up with to an extent, like the monetization predatory systems, cheaters, server issues, audio, etc., finally all just came crashing down. The people couldn't deal with it anymore, and it was just like a roll-on effect. Everyone was just hating on Apex. Eventually, the devs did come out with a statement saying that they listened to the community and they reverted the change with the Battle Pass so that it was now purchasable with Apex coins again. A lot of the other changes still persisted in the Battle Pass and people weren't overly too happy with that. And the whole statement in general was basically taken as the Apex devs just trying to save face with the community. Although in this statement, they did also include, to quote, "Your priorities are our priorities. Cheaters, game stability, and quality of life updates are top of mind. We need to get better, and it's why we're acknowledging them here." Which was absolutely great and amazing to hear from the dev team, but now looking back at it, it was great to hear, but it would have been better to have that implemented. Since then, the cheater issue has only got worse. It is rumored and said that about 40% of Master and Apex Predator players are cheating. Top streamers are consistently unable to play the game as they get stream sniped by cheaters day in, day out, making the game unplayable for them. For example, like his Watson. If you go and try and play high tier ranked on console, it is absolutely nothing but teamers, with most of them not getting banned. And if you played Apex literally at all this season, you will know the game servers suck. I have never hit more no-regs in my entire life. It is absolutely absurd. Or you could even go look at Ranked Rumble, which was added to the game recently, and I thought had so much potential. I was super hyped for. I was like, a new ranked game mode that is a little bit different, has an in-game leaderboard that you can see and try and work your way up the ranks. This is going to be absolutely awesome. And then when it was released, there were so many issues. If you tried to play Ranked Rumble in the 3 Strikes event for it, you were put in the same lobby as people that were just playing it normally for pubs. So if your teammates weren't enjoying their pub game and left and you were playing ranked, you just didn't have a teammate. And then at the end, when everyone was done and dusted and you were about to get your ranks, the devs didn't remove any of the cheaters on the leaderboards. Oh, and did I mention that the Rumble leaderboards were 90% filled with cheaters? But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry, I went on a little tangent there. August 6, 2024, Season 22, the most recent season of Apex, and we had an AA nerf, an aim assist nerf. This is something I am not going to go into too much depth on, as I'm a mouse and keyboard player and don't have much knowledge about controllers. I personally felt like it was good, and I think it's been amazing, but I don't play on controllers, so I can't say, and I can imagine that the average player, or you're just your general gamer, your casual player, could have been affected a lot by it, so I'll just have to trust you guys and say that maybe that was bad for the majority, the larger player base, aka controllers, consoles, and the average player. And now, yes, in Season 22, my biggest issue with this season, not the AA changes, not the dwindling player base. Okay, I probably use the dwindling player base, but why were trackers removed? Trackers were one of the most amazing things in Apex. It gave people things to grind for. Whether you were a massive kill grinder, getting 50,000 kills a season, or a new player aiming to try and get 1,000 a season, it was just as important to every single skill level in the game. It was an awesome thing to rep and show on your banners, and they just removed them. with no real reason given. Like, there is legitimately no downside to having trackers in the game. It is only good for the game, only gives people a progression, something to aim for, something to do, a reason to play the game. It makes absolutely no sense. And they didn't give us any real reasoning either. I wish they had. Please, somebody explain to me, why were seasonal trackers removed? And that brings us up to present day. I can't sit here and pretend that I covered every single point and that I speak for the whole Apex community with this, but that is my brutally honest review of Apex after playing it for 16,000 hours as to why it's going downhill, why it is slowly dying. Overall, I think the biggest issues are monetization, although if they did somehow manage to fix these next few issues, I don't think that would really be that big of an issue. Cheaters, they're ridiculous, always been terrible in the game, but they're worse than ever right now. And then the final issue, one that I didn't overly cover in, the big dot point issues throughout all of Apex's career, because this is one that's kind of been there for a long time, is progression. Apex doesn't really have any progression. When the game was released, it was amazing. There was so much to do, so much to work towards. But now, as the game's got older and longer, there's not really been much added. Badge-wise, we get event badges that are ridiculously easy to unlock, and we've had one win streak badge added, but apart from that, there's been nothing. I mean, they did add the weapon mastery, but that was the worst thing I have ever seen implemented by anyone ever. A lot of gamers need a reason to log on, something to aim towards, something to, achieve, a goal. And when there isn't one, it's kind of eh. And for the other people that just want to enjoy and play the game, it's a throwback to SBMM. Kind of impossible in Apex at the moment. In theory, all these issues are very fixable. And if Apex did manage to fix all these issues or parts of these issues and have a good rank system, I forgot to mention that, finally get a good rank system, this game would thrive because it has the best core mechanics, the best core movement, the best core gunplay that nothing else matches up to. If they fix the issues, this game will shoot back up again. And it's definitely not dead either. And finally, a couple more points I want to state. One of my friends wrote this on Twitter the other day, Solus, he's the editor for His Watson, if you know His Watson, and I think he summed it up very well. I think Respawn loves their game with every fiber in their bean, aka all the developers. I think EA despises having to be the financial backer to Apex, and that shows. Every developer that I've ever had the privilege to speak to has been honestly an amazing person, and they've shown absolutely nothing but love for this game. I think they're just heavily restricted on what they can and can't do and what they can and can't say. EA is known for being a money-hungry, terrible company, and that is honestly where all the issues come from. If you got this far in the video, honestly, thank you for watching. It was a long one and a lot of me talking, so I'm sorry. I hope I didn't bore you too much, but let me know in the comments below, what's your biggest issue with Apex? I hope you're doing awesome. I hope you're doing amazing, and yeah, peace out.